Hello, everybody. Dr. Joe Vitale here. You have landed on Zero Limits Living. Every week, I bring you inspiration and information to transform your life. This show has become so popular so quickly that it is now seen or heard on over 1,000 different platforms, including Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire. I can't even remember all of them. I put up a website so you can go to one place and just sit back and binge. Go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com, ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com, and watch them all as they are being done and posted every week. Also, before we get into this amazing episode, because you're in for a treat here, people often ask how they can work with me. It's pretty exclusive and pretty rare to do it with me personally, but I have people that have been trained by me. So if you're interested, go to miraclescoaching.com, www.miraclescoaching.com. Now let's jump in. Take a deep breath and relax and feel the room around you. I want to see if you can feel a presence. I want to see if you can feel your angels, your guides, your partners of the white light. Because I haven't really talked about this before, but I've been enlisting the help of my own guardian angels for about 2 decades, and they've come through. They've come through with this online TV show, Zero Limits Living, and with all the profound guests I've been bringing along. So what we want to explore is, where are your guides? How do you communicate with your guides? How do you get answers from your guides? How can you enlist their help? And what I've done to achieve this particular show is gone into the world and found the world's #1 expert on this subject. She is the authority on this. I'm going to read her bio, show one of her books, and then bring her in. So get ready. Sonia Choquette is a celebrated author, spiritual teacher, and the world's foremost leader in activating intuitive intelligence in people. Sonia is known for her delightful humor and adept skill in quickly shifting people out of psychological and creative frustration and into a productive, joyful, and intuitive flow. She is the author of 28 internationally best-selling books on intuition, creativity, and personal inner peace, most notably with the New York Times bestseller, The Answer is Simple. Her newest release is Trust Your Vibes, which is coming out in June. She also wrote Ask Your Guides, which I have been befriending over the last few days. Sonia is inspiring a global consciousness movement around her belief that, as human beings, we are divine beings endowed with 6 senses to guide us through life. Sonia insists that we need our innate 6th sense in order to make the most authentic, well-informed, healthful, and soul-satisfying decisions possible. Sonia's work has been published in over 40 countries, translated into 37 languages, making her one of the most widely read authors and experts in her field of work. She is also a personal friend of mine who I have not seen in years, so I have the double thrill of bringing her to the masses, and I get to talk to her. Sonia, thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Joe, and wonderful to see you again.
It's wonderful to see you. You've still become a world traveler. No matter what's going on, you still move. I understand you're living in Paris. Right now you're in London. Nothing's holding you back.
It's in my blood. I just have that vibe. You know, my spirit is a traveler and a teacher.
Yeah.
And I've lived in Paris for 7 years, but I have a granddaughter now. So she pulled me into London, and it's a big draw.
Oh, well, London is one of my favorite places. I've not been to Paris yet, so that's on the list, but London is one that I do admire. Hey, when you travel like this, do you pay extra to bring your guides with you?
Nope. And they always help me go first class.
I read a story in Ask Your Guides, which is one of your fantastic books, about you changing a flight when you already had a flight with you and 5 others in your family. You were going to Paris. Yes. Can you tell that story? Do you remember enough details about it?
Yes, I do. I traveled every summer to Paris for many years. I went to school there as a second home. So we would go in the summer over 2 weeks over July, usually Bastille Day celebration. It was a tradition. I had my family and 2 friends, and we were in Chicago. We were waiting to board our flight, United Paris to, or Chicago to Paris. We all had our tickets in hand and flights deplaning. And I get the guidance that we need to change planes. And it's the way I live. So without talking to anybody or thinking, I just stepped out of line and went to the agent. And I said, excuse me, if you don't mind, would you help me? Would you please check to see if we could take another flight? And she said, well, what do you mean? You have boarding cards. We're going to be boarding in a few minutes. And I said, I know, but would you just humor me? And would you just please check? And she said, it's the middle of July. There's no way you're going to get another flight. And I'm ready to board this flight. You have to step away. She was not amused, thought it was a little kooky. So I said, well, I'm a 1K traveler, which just means I put 100,000 miles. So I said, I'm just going to ask you to please indulge me a little and look. And I said, and by the way, there's 6 of us. So this about pushed her over the edge. Her flight, right. Her boarding agent partner watched us, and he saw me as a troublemaker, and he came over and he goes, what's going on here? And I said, I need 6 tickets for a different flight. Would you just please check? And he said, no way. It's not happening. I said, if you look, I'll pray and we'll see how it goes. So they don't know what to do. So she starts slamming on the keys, and he thinks I'm a nut. So he walks away. But as she's slamming on the keys, the captain walks up and whispers in her ear, this flight has a mechanical. No one's going anywhere.
Wow.
She looked up at me and she goes, how did you know? And I said, trust my vibes. And she goes, oh my gosh, slam, slam, slam. Slams out. She pushed out 5 tickets, 6 tickets. She goes, take these and run. I can't believe it. So I grabbed the tickets, whistled to my family, who are used to this. Let's go. They followed me. And as I'm running down the corridor, I look, and there are 5 coach tickets and 1 first class.
Wow.
And
wow.
We were on the 9 o'clock flight, and 310 passengers were on that flight, didn't go anywhere.
That's so amazing. You know, it raises a bunch of issues here, or at least questions. One is your level of trust. Now, I know, because I've been reading your book, and I know you personally, that your mom influenced you early on. And so even as a child, it was normal for you to have guides and to communicate with guides. So by the time you got to the airport in Chicago and you get a message to do something, you're like, yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, and you just obey. But the rest of us, this seems like a huge leap. I'm imagining that if I'm standing in Chicago and I start to feel the whisper in my ear about, no, get off this plane, Joe, go to the next one. I've got, just shut up. Just bring me a drink. Just, wash it out. How do we learn to listen to our guidance?
Well, the first thing is, I have been teaching a long time, so I've talked to a lot of people. And honestly, I asked the question, have you ever had that experience? Let's not talk about what you've done with it, but have you had the feeling, had the experience? And quite honestly, I have never met a person, and I'm talking from China to South America, across the world. No one says no. So I point out, well, then the big conspiracy is this isn't normal, but everybody's having these experiences. We are getting these feelings, and they're so subtle. They're not going to hit you. It's not Elvis jumping into the room. It's like a butterfly wing on your cheek. It's so subtle, but it does get your attention. So I say, let's warm it up. I'm not going to ask you to make the leaps, but if you do get the feeling, say it out loud. You don't have to listen. You give yourself the choice to ignore it, but if you name it, you claim it. And if you just say, well, I have a feeling I should, I don't know, maybe something's off with this flight, or weird. I'm just getting this feeling I should change flights. I wonder why. And I always invite the word wonder, not figure it out, because that goes to your logic brain, which cuts you off from your heart guidance and your spirit. Just wonder. And then it's very important to give yourself a choice. I can ignore it, I can listen, but at least I'll express it. Because after you start naming it, within 2 weeks, generally speaking, you will have had enough of these little subtle nudges and enough expressing to start paying attention that this isn't crazy. This is actually something that I'm getting that might be worth paying attention to. So you build up the confidence by you're getting guidance. It's a relationship. So you're getting to know one another. It's kind of get familiar. Then again, you don't have to actually do anything because that scares you. Ask for guidance, ask for help, but ask out loud. Because again, when you ask out loud, you can't deny it later. It's not like a pinball rolling around in your head. Put it out there. And even better, if you can recruit someone to hear you, but not a skeptic. Just, you know what, I'm going to just ask for some help. I don't know. I'm going to ask the universe. If you want to be a universalist, I'm going to ask my angels. If you're more of a theist, if you, like I am, I believe in God, I believe in angels, whatever, your language, but just ask for a sign, ask for a gift, and ask for help. Usually within 72 hours, I'd say, unless you are really toxic. And by that, I mean, you're alcoholic or you're a drug addict, but even then you can get some help. You can. It's just, you're going to be more resistant. It's not that it isn't going to come, but you might be more inclined to miss it. But if you are at least this much available, you're going to get a sign. You're going to get a flower, a penny, a feather, a car driving by, and it will be something you can't deny. Wow. It'll be fun and often funny. So there'll be something about it that captures your imagination, your sense of humor, is non-threatening. It amuses you. It pulls you in, and it kind of, your guides kind of bring you in gently through sense of joy or humor. So that's how it happens. Then you begin to have this conversation. I say, if you want to hurry it up, simply believe. Simply believe there's a benevolent universe out there that wants to help you. Just like you believe when you get on an airplane, it's going to take you from A to B. You don't know quite how it works, but you believe it works. There's evidence it works. There's enough evidence out there that people are being helped. There's 1,000,001 churches with angels and halos. They're not all hallucinating, just take the leap. But you still don't have to follow the guidance. You have a choice. And I think giving yourself that choice allows the part of you that's controlling or afraid or an ego to relax. And then it becomes more of a game, more of an invitation, a curiosity. And that's how you bring the energy in.
I love this. I love your stories, and I love what you're saying here. You also pointed out something I was going to ask you about, but I want to make sure everybody heard it. I had been told or learned it or intuited years ago, decades ago at this point, that when I asked for help, I need to do it out loud.
I agree with that. This was a woman who was a flight attendant, and she lived in Kansas City, about maybe 50 miles from the airport, because the airport's way out in the cornfields, and she was more in Leawood, Kansas. So it was 50 miles, and she was a flight attendant, and flight attendants generally start their days at crack of dawn. That's pretty much how it works. So she had a 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. check-in. And she's packing her suitcase, and all of a sudden she hears in her inner voice, "Wow, it's a good day for donuts." And it strikes her, and she says, "Well, actually, it is a good day for donuts. Every day is a good day for donuts, but I got to get to work." So she packs her bag and puts it in the car, shuts the trunk, starts to drive, and she hears it again. "It's such a good day for donuts." So she laughs out loud, and she says, "Well, I can't disagree. When I get to the airport, I'm going to treat myself to a donut." So she drives now ready to enter the highway. And it's a long expanse, but once she gets on the highway, and she sees a donut truck driving into the little gas station coffee shop that's right on the corner. And again, she hears, it is such a good day for donuts. She gives up. She goes, okay, there's the donut truck. And she says this out loud. I'm going to get a donut, but if I'm late, you better help me. So she pulls in behind the donut truck and shuts off her car to go get a donut and looks down. She notices she's completely out of gas.
Yeah.
Had she got on that entryway, there would have been no gas station that would have been close enough. She would have run out of gas. And so she looks down and she hears, see, it's a good day for donuts.
I love the story in the book. And I love it even more when you tell it. Thank you. I have a lot of questions because my job is to help the people listening or watching improve their lives. This is called Zero Limits Living. So I want to give them the tools. But in order to do that, I want them to understand just who you are. Besides the intro that I already gave, and I mentioned about you growing up with your mother receiving inspiration, you started very early. Can you tell us what that was like to be a child receiving guidance? Did it seem unusual?
Here's the thing. My mother was a prisoner of war as a child in World War II. And one of the consequences of that experience is she lost her hearing. So my mother was deaf. Then she came to America and married my father when she was 15. So she was a deaf child with no authority figures. And the only thing that really saved her life, helped her meet my father and get her to America, was this inner guidance, because she was cut off from her whole family. So when I grew up, this was the only way I had ever learned to listen. She would say, we have ears, but you listen with your heart. And the inner voice is the voice that loves you, the voice of your spirit, your angels and guides, and God loves you. And that voice is what you have to listen to. And she told us all, there were 7 children. She said, don't listen to others because they're afraid and they will tell you what isn't true. Listen to your spirit and listen to your guides, and always trust your vibes. She said, I say vibes because it's an energy that is a vibration. So I grew up with the 6th sense being the most important. That was just the family dynamic. We would listen. And when I grew up, my mother would say, if I was a kid and I'd say, can I go play with my friend? She always said, before I answer, what does your heart say? What does your spirit say? So she wired us back to our checking in with our own guidance on every decision from the earliest age. And I think it was a survival technique for her to make sure we would always be safe.
Wow.
So when I started school, it was confusing to me that what was so natural and second nature, other people weren't doing. It took me from about 1st grade to about 3rd grade that I realized that listening to my spirit and talking to my angels and working with my guides, which was never unusual, was unusual. And it was a bit confusing because I went to a Catholic school. So I thought, well, what's the problem? You're teaching all this and I'm actually engaging. And now you're treating me like I'm a little bit off the wall. But my mom said that she said, you know, Sonia, God made me deaf as a blessing because I don't have to listen to nonsense. And she said, people get disconnected because they listen to their fears and other people's fears. She used to say, I'm sorry, I'm deaf. I just can't hear negativity. She had a great sense of humor. So it was second nature, but I learned pretty young that if you're not connected, you're really handicapped. It's okay if we lose our sight, and it's okay if we lose our hearing, because she was my example. It's not okay to lose your lifeline to what is the divine protection guiding you. That is the one we need to preserve. And the good news about that is it's like a light that gets shut off, but you can turn it on and it works right away.
It's so beautiful. I'm also curious, when you did discover that it was not normal in the outside world, like when you went to school, did you go through a period of self-doubt or skepticism about what your mother had taught you?
Never, for this reason.
Mm-hmm.
I had 6 brothers and sisters.
Ah,
So I had an internal community
yeah.
that affirmed me. I can imagine, and I've recognized this, which is why I've devoted myself to this work, is that we do need some community, some affirming, believing ears and eyes. And that was my gift. Listening and hearing my guides and being intuitive is not the gift. That's the given. The gift was the community. The gift was people that affirmed me, even when others told me to doubt myself.
Oh, I got chills on that. That you have to say that again. First of all, what you said was about the intuition, the talking to the guides, receiving guidance, and so forth. That's not a gift. It's a given.
Yes, we are given that naturally, and we all
that's so huge. That is so huge. It's more a matter of awakening and remembering it. It's
and
already there.
Yourself permission, because even when it's been ignored, it's still working in all of us.
And then the second part of what you're saying is about the gift is the community. And I'm a great believer in having people who believe in you almost more than you believe in yourself.
I agree.
At least in the beginning, at least to get kickstarted. You and I are members of the Transformational Leadership Council as in a way, in part, as a kind of community to do that for each other.
Yes.
So I find this profound. So you had a family community growing up. What about when you left the family?
Well, by the time I left the family, I was 17. And I went to college, and then I went on to travel and be a flight attendant. But I have a very close family, and we all spoke vibes. So we would all talk to each other. How are your vibes? This is and we were each other's sounding boards. Like my vibe, and always my vibes, or the other way we called it is my spirit. My spirit is telling me, or my spirit guides. So the conversation, I was never the Lone Ranger because I had the family, but I watched and observed because I started very young guiding other people. It was just obviously my destiny. I was already 12 years old, 15 years old. I taught my first class, driven by the idea that you guys are unnecessarily handicapped. I need to help you turn on the light, because that is the only way you're going to make the decisions that really honor and respect who you are and help you thrive to your greatest expression. Maybe because my mom was a child and that saved her life. And without that, it would have been a disaster. So I started teaching and creating little communities. I became a flight attendant for a while and started with the people I worked with on the airplanes. And then I went to France and started there. From the earliest age, I was building families of what I call your 6 sensories, your vibe tribe club, your good vibe tribe. And I think also because my mom lost her family, we adopted family. Everybody in the neighborhood came to our family. So we had a big community. I grew up with 20 people in my home all the time.
Wow.
And my mom called everybody family. So, but we had to listen to our vibes, and we had to be real and be authentic and be of service. Those were kind of the guidelines. You're here to serve and make the world beautiful. That was our guide. So I've decided that what we need is, that's why I wrote all these books and say, look, it's not something to develop as much as to turn on. If I teach you how to open your eyes, you're going to see. Now you might have to get used to that. Your experience is a bit different and more informed. Just like when people have their hearing restored or their vision restored with miraculous medicine, you have to still adjust, but you do. And I feel it's the same with your inner guidance. But the word I hear from people when they start to listen is they say they feel relieved.
Mm.
I say, how do you feel when you trust your vibes and acknowledge and listen? What's the word? They say satisfied, relieved, reassured. And I say, well, where's it coming from? And they always point to the heart.
Oh.
Nobody's ever said it's coming from here. In any culture, with anybody, on any translator, I say, where do you feel it? We're hardwired.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be guided. Birds have radar, bats have their own means of flying around, whales have sonar, and we have vibes. We are hardwired by God too.
Now, your book is called, this one, you've written a lot of books, but this one on Ask Your Guides has the word guides in it. So when you talk about asking your guides, who are we actually talking about? Because in this conversation we've been having so far, you've been talking about inner guidance, and it could be coming from our heart, and we can sense it, and we can read our vibes, and we can turn it on. But when I hear guides, I start thinking of angels.
Right. Well, see, that's just it.
Okay.
Our guidance, first and foremost, comes from our higher self, which is connected to God. But then God loves us so much, He gives us so much support. So we have two sources: angels, which are always with us from our first breath to our last, and they help us stay safe. They help us grow. They help us overcome our emotional challenges. They help us with our heart issues, our capacity to love, self-accept, be unconditionally loving, be our best divine selves. Then we have guides. And to me, guides are like the volunteer corps. And they're just the added bonus that comes in to help us with our human experience in every possible way. So there are categories of guides. We have nature spirits, and they help us just connect to our body, to the planet. They're companions. They help us navigate the world. People often say, I just feel like I have maybe a bird, or I speak to, when I see the animals, they speak to me, or when I'm in nature and I'm with plants and trees, I feel the essence. You feel it because the spirit world is populated as much as the physical world. We have healers who come and help us with our emotional and physical health and our mental health. We have teachers who get these kinds of books in your hand. You might be in the bookshelf and bang, it falls on your head, or you just happen to see it, or someone mentions it in front of you in the grocery store line. We have teachers who get information to us, like people who get to your channel. They're guides, they're teacher guides brought them to you. We have helpers on tasks. Say you're renovating your house. All of a sudden, you're going to have a bunch of helper guys. All of a sudden, you have to replace a pane of glass in the window, and you're going to do it yourself. And the next thing you know, you're kind of figuring it out. It's kind of coming together. You end up with the right people, or you end up at the right store. You might have a cooking guide, or you might have a guide to help you find a job, or guide to help you find the right place to live, or help you when you're moving. So there's so much love and there's so much support that and all these guides are helping you listen to this guide, which listens to the divine source.
That's an overwhelming amount of benevolent support.
So what I say is, don't worry about it. The system works. Just ask your guides. They'll sort out who needs to help you. You don't have to have it in your head, but it is fun to know.
So when you go to ask your guides, we already covered that we want to ask out loud. And if we have a trusted friend who's on the same vibe level, we can ask with them or in front of them. Is there a way to specifically make a request? Are there some pointers on how to make that talk to your guide actually work?
Well, my favorite, and what I do every day, is when I open my eyes, I say, divine spirit and all my spirit helpers, move me in the direction of my highest good and my highest service this day. That just calls everybody into play, and you'll never believe how you end up driving this way, and then you drive that way, and then you end up here. And that kind of is your overarching setting of attention, because your guides will not interfere. They have to be invited. They have to be asked. I also say, we're emotional and short-sighted creatures. So we should always say, I need help with this instead of do this way. Because your solution, my mother used to always say this, what we know is not all there is to know, and certainly not necessarily the best there is to know. So always ask for the best solution, not my solution.
I like that.
And I think that's just absolutely intelligent, because I'll tell you why. When you're working with my solution, people don't believe, because they have limited information. So when they're going through their own internal Rolodex, they think there is no solution. I'll give you a case in point. My daughter married a beautiful man here in London who is Egyptian. He's getting his PhD in biomedical engineering, and he is getting his final thesis, and then his visa would be renewed. Well, he took his sweet time because his temperament isn't type A, and he put his thesis in too late. And his professor, who needed to sign off on it, went on vacation, and his visa was going to expire, which means he was going to be sent back to Egypt, and they had literally 72 hours or it's over. Well, I've passed on the legacy to my daughter. He called 3 or 4 attorneys, and they said, you're out of luck. There's nothing we can do. My daughter Sabrina said, no. We are calling in all the guides, the SOS angels, the visa guides, the education guides. And she pulled a name out of a hat just about on the internet, called this woman who happened to answer, which is highly unusual because they're in London, instead of getting voicemail. And she said, well, actually, there is a very little known loophole, which says you have a right to education. And if you are in an educational scenario, you will be able to maintain your visa until you get a hearing. And the hearings take about 4 months to get. So you get a temporary stay. He got it within 12 hours of his expiration. Professor came back, got the paper, passed the PhD, got the visa way before the hearing was ever even scheduled, and they sailed through. That's a guide.
Oh, that is a beautiful story. I got chills up my spine with that one. What about when people say, I don't get any answers? I ask my guidance, I speak out loud. They do what they understand to do. They're learning more pointers from you right now, but they also say, I'm not getting anything.
I think, Joe, the biggest obstacle to not getting anything is that you're secretly wanting to get what you want. And so
I'm sorry. I think that is absolutely brilliant.
Honestly, I think what they're saying, I'm not getting any answers, but we're not getting the answer they want to get.
Yeah, they're waiting for the answer that they already want.
They want. Yeah. And so they get you. So that is a challenge. You truly, I say, don't ask for help if you're not truly available for something other than your own idea.
Oh, that is so good. That is so good. Well, the other thing I would wonder is, how do you know the difference between your ego and an angel? How do you know the difference between your ego voice doing what we just talked about? We're waiting for the answer we want, ego, and being open to receiving and knowing the difference. Maybe that's the real question.
There is a very specific difference.
Tell me.
We're talking about vibration. Ego vibration has its own signature. It contracts. It just squeezes in. If it's your ego, you're going to feel contracted. It's just going to be a little bit less breath. It's going to be just a little bit of more defended. It's going to be a little bit locked down. And I have a humorous description of this. You want to hear it?
Yes.
I call it TBS, tight butt syndrome. You just kind of lock down your jaw, your butt, your hips. You just kind of lock down when it's your ego. And if it's your spirit, if it's guidance, if it's angels, you open up. There's light in your eyes. There's a smile. Your heart opens. You can't explain it. It's not in your head. It's in your body. And you just light up. And that's why we always say, aha, aha. Because that is the sound of the heart opening. And so feel this. Now, if you're really stuck and can't discern, ego talks and talks and talks and talks. Guidance, very little words. Do this, go there, green light, try that, don't do that. And that's another way. There's a lot of conversation. That's your ego.
Well, let me ask you a different kind of question. And this is kind of blunt, but we've been through COVID, pandemic. Now they talk about some kind of other pox going around, and there's a war overseas and people resigning, being fired, being confused. How have you maintained a high vibe as the world has rumbled and shifted and shaken and stirred a whole lot of us?
Well, I'm older than most people, but in the 70s, and you might remember this, there was a commercial, 70s, 80s, but 70s, I think. I was young. And the commercial was called, "Is it real or is it Memorex?" Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Right.
So in this commercial, and you can find it on YouTube, there's a crystal goblet. And Ella Fitzgerald, this beautiful singer, sings a high note and the goblet rattles.
Yeah.
And she sings a higher note and the goblet rattles more and more and more. She sings a higher note and the goblet rattles so much it contracts and shatters. Now, what is happening here is a higher vibration is hitting the pattern, holding the goblet together, and it's contracting to hold on to itself. So it becomes very intense. Each time the note elevates, the contraction becomes grander as the old pattern is trying to hang on. What I see happening in the world, first with COVID, then with everything that we're hearing, is these are the old contracting patterns of the sort of hierarchical power, war, ego construct that has governed our world, trying its last breaths to hold on. And it's shaking and rattling and rolling. But truthfully, we are on the threshold of a breakthrough. And so what we need to do is be remembering everything that we see is true but incomplete. And the greater majority of this planet is elevating. The greater majority, which is not governing the media, it's not governing the news, it's not governing the old power structures, is actually elevating at a pretty fast clip. We don't have to get to 100% higher consciousness to change the world. We only have to get to 51%. And we are right there. So every one of us who keeps our energy focused, emotional energy in particular, focused on everything good and beautiful in human nature, in your own nature, in humanity, we will break through this last coughing breaths of trying to hold us down. It's on the way out. And we just have to focus emotionally on our most beautiful self, and that most humans indeed are beautiful.
That is absolutely pure wisdom and very beautiful. It feels loving and it feels wise.
And just to say, watch your channel instead of the news.
Right, right. Well, thank you.
For real. For real.
One of the things I hear ever since the movie The Secret came out is, how do I win the lottery? Do you hear that from people who say, hey, if I got guides, how come they don't give me the winning numbers?
You know, I have to tell you a very honest story.
Yeah.
I mentor people. And one of the women I mentor won $172 million. And it actually destroyed her life. And I'm helping her write her first book. And so this is our value system. Want to win the lottery because our value system has been imprinted on us that is the only source and the primary source and the most important source of our safety, joy, and security. But the truth is, we need to redefine what the lottery is. A joyful, meaningful life with rich and satisfying relationships, work you care about, health in your body, being in a community where you're contributing and adding to a meaningful life. We need to redefine the lottery. Yeah. And then everybody can start seeing that they have a chance at participating instead of it being this hierarchical kind of old story, only the most aggressive at the top or lucky or the one against the whole. So you're always the outsider. So I just say that's a value system that is not saying we can't be prosperous and creative, but I can assure you it is not exclusive source of happiness. Yeah. It is not. Let's redefine lottery, and then you can see your foot in the door of it. And with it will naturally come tremendous prosperity because it's just part of the harmony of the universe.
I love that. Another way I think to look at this is to ask people, what do you think the lottery or winning the lottery would do? And they think it's going to bring them happiness. It's going to bring them security. It's going to bring them well-being. And when I look at that, I can think to myself, well, you can have that right now.
Right.
And most likely you already do have that right now underneath the fear, the concern, the doubt, and so forth. Sonia, we're going to run out of time. And that's when I get so irritated with this program because I want more time with you. In the final couple of minutes we have here, I know you have a lot of books. You have a new book coming out. The one I've been reading is Ask Your Guides here. I know that you work with a select few people for a year-long program. And what would be your takeaway? What do you want people to do? We're going to finish this program. They're going to go about their day.
If I were going to give you 3 steps, that would be super simple. Step 1, Ask Your Guides. And get Trust Your Vibes, because those are your basic manuals. I'd also suggest that possibly it might be more helpful to get the audio version. Because if I am teaching it, you feel it. You might be able to feel the frequency or both. Okay. There's something about the way I communicate that is a transmission on that level. So those are the 2. And if you really want to dive in, actually, one of our transformational leadership fellows, I have a lot of courses, but I just created a course that came out this week with him called Your Sixth Sense Superpower with Bishop at Mind Valley.
Oh, yes.
And because he's so talented in what he does, this course leaves no stone unturned. Wow. So if you want, I have an Ask Your Guides course. If you want to come to my website, I have a Trust Your Vibes. And if you really want bells and whistles of real impressive production, I would say the Sixth Sense Superpower. But you could start with just the audio version and go for a walk. Trust Your Vibes or Ask Your Guides.
And I have to ask, this show is called Zero Limits Living. Do we have any limits?
Only one. It's your imagination. You are only limited by your own imagination. If your imagination isn't limited, my mother used to say, There's no lack of opportunity, only lack of imagination. So that's what I would say.
I'm going to sneak in another question.
And that you can correct.
And I'm going to sneak in another question. What is a question you wish somebody would ask you?
I wish somebody would ask me, how could I fall more immediately in love with myself?
Oh, that's good. And how can we fall more immediately in love with ourselves?
To stop identifying yourself as your ego, your body, or your history, and start to recognize the power that makes your heart beat is a miracle. It is a mystery, and it is the power of who you really are, the spirit of the divine you.
I'm speechless. Good Lord. Sonia, I cannot thank you enough. You are such a beautiful being, such a beautiful friend. I miss you. I long to see you again. Sit down, have dinner, talk, share, raise our vibes, and more.
Would that be fun?
Yes, it would. And what is your website? It's soniachoquette.net or is it .com?
Both.
Oh, it is both.
.net or com. Mm-hmm.
I've been speaking to Sonia Choquette. I've been reading the book Ask Your Guides. The new one is called Trust Your Vibes. All of her books are on Amazon. She's given the website out. I encourage everybody to raise your vibes, tune in, ask your guides for assistance, listen to the whisper when they whisper in your heart or in your soul, and act on what you're receiving. I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. You've been watching Zero Limits Living. Every week I bring you inspiration and information to elevate your life, to transform it. The show's now seen on 1,000 different platforms, including Roku and Amazon and Apple TV and a whole lot more. Go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com to see all the episodes, ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com. If you want to know about working with coaches I've trained, go to miraclescoaching.com. I love you all. I thank Lux Media Studios, Candace Barr, Nick, who's behind the cameras today, and everybody that has taken the time to tune in. Thank you. I love you. Expect miracles.
Glutathione is a big word. It's the body's own master antioxidant. It's a scavenger for free radical, bacteria, and viruses. There are no products in the market with the ingredient NASET. NASET increases the production of glutathione that's in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system, elevate sense of well-being, support muscle strength and endurance, cognitive function, and liver support. It helps with increased energy and blood sugar regulation. Get your bottle of GSH Plus from www.salvationnutra.com.